What's up, guys? We have another rapid game with the white pieces. We're rated 934. We're up against Harshal 8624, rated 936. Again, we open with c4. He responds with a reverse Sicilian, e5, putting a pawn in the center. We develop a fianchetto our bishop on the light squares, but wait. Black goes g5, and I have no idea what this is. It just looks extremely weakening on these squares, because now no pawns can protect those squares. It looks like severe weakness, so I'm just going to continue my development, and just keep in mind that this looks wrong and it's weakening, so I'll look to take advantage of that later. He develops his bishop, again weakening more dark squares. He's going to need that bishop in the future. I am going to develop my knight because it comes with a double attack on these two undefended crazy pawns. He could go f6, but then the light squares become super weak. It does defend both pawns though, so I don't know what else he's going to do. Queen f6, I mean, that's asking for trouble. So black's already in a tough spot because he played such bad moves. And he does go f6, which weakens the light squares a lot around his king. Also takes away the good square from his knight. I don't like it, but what are you going to do? So he didn't develop. His king is in the center. I'm going to try to take advantage by pushing d4 a little earlier than I normally do. If he takes, I'll take. And basically now he has this super ugly pawn structure. His king is wide open with no development and no defense. And meanwhile, I'm 1 second away from castling. Strong bishop, nice knight. Queen's going to be there. Bishop's already developed. So I would say black is pretty much lost, as crazy as that sounds. But that's why you have to play just principal chess in the opening. You can't do whatever you want. I mean, you can, but it's not going to work. And so now he's confused. And so my king's going to be safe. His is still here. He removes his bishop from the attack. What does this threaten? Nothing. It's just a check. The downside is he's moving his only developed piece again. And my response is going to be a developing move. So that's good for me, right? I want to develop. I want to put my knight here anyway. And if he trades, I will gladly accept his dark square bishop for my knight. So now he takes in the center. I could recapture with two different pieces. I'm going to recapture with the knight. It's more standard to not bring your queen out early. It also has the benefit of increasing the power of my bishop. And it eyes one of the major weaknesses in black's position, this white light f5 square. He could take with his bishop and double our pawns, and we would have double isolated pawns. And those are a long-term permanent weakness. Very ugly. The upside is they open up diagonals and files, so we would have to use our advantage in development to try to overpower our opponent before the endgame comes and before he can take advantage of the c3 and c4 pawns. So if you look at it now, we have this knight in the center, this bishop developed, this guy's eyeing everything, right? The bishop, the queen, it's all for the cost of this structural weakness. I'll take it. So he develops his knight to h6 because it can't go to f6. It also puts a little control on the f5 square, but it can't jump there, so it's kind of ugly. I'm also noticing the knight is loose, so you can play a move like h4. He can't take because the knight would hang, and if he doesn't take, then you get to take, and then if he takes back, his king is open even further. That's a possibility. You could also go here, try to stop castling, although he'll probably just put a pawn there. So let's be flexible and let's just castle and see what he does. And now our position's fine. Material's equal. Instead of, okay, so he goes c5. What does this threaten? Well, it attacks the knight. What is the drawback? 1, he's not developing a minor piece. 2, he's not castling. 3, he's creating more weaknesses by moving pawns. Now that this pawn moved here, he weakened these two squares, right? And so, yes, I'll move my knight, but now I'll be able to put pieces on these squares and it'll be devastating for him. That's why you don't want to move pawns willy-nilly. But whatever. It's my move. He probably wants to kick my knight and place his knight here, but it'll be temporary. It's not going to stay there. Where do we move our knight? I kind of like this square just because it coordinates on this square immediately with the queen. If we could plant it there, our position is, it'll be a super strong bind. And if he doesn't allow us, like, let's say he pushes 2, then we can just take that pawn. So I'm going to go here because this is kind of a big threat. It may not win material, but you wouldn't trade it anyway. You would leave the knight here. And what it does is it makes it extremely hard for black to move. And now the queen has beautiful scope. And black's king is looking weaker and weaker. And so if you look at this position, a new player may say, oh, black's better because of this. These doubled isolated pawns. White has 3 pawn islands. Black has 2 pawn islands. Black is better, but no, white's better. Better development, safer king. Most important thing in chess is how safe is the king. So he moves the pawn. The only thing is my piece is still coordinated here, so although I can't create the bind I was looking for, I can win a pawn. And it does come with check. And then I could take the bishop, which now is no longer in a bind. It has full scope here. So now it might be worth taking. Let's just take this with check. That way he loses castling rights. And we get to take a bishop. And we got to take a pawn. Also, this pawn is hanging, so that we could take that instead. For example, knight takes. If bishop takes, rook's trapped. And if knight takes and bishop doesn't take, the queen is hit. So if the queen moves, our knight can move and the rook is going to be hit. So he moves his king, but instead of moving it to the side to try to get it safe, he brings it up closer to the center. So that's always going to be a lot riskier, of course. I kind of wish my e-pawn wasn't there so I could just throw a rook. But okay. There's so many moves. Yes, you could take this with the knight. Yes, you could take this with the bishop. Yes, you could take this with the knight. Yes, you could bring your queen in. I mean, there's so many moves. It's hard to say. I want to bring my queen in, though. I want to bring in my most powerful piece now that his king is so weak. The only problem is your knight's hanging, which is why he moved it here. Right? I'm assuming that's the reason. And so if he takes with the queen, we don't have any cool tricks, unfortunately. So we either move the knight or defend it. We can't really defend it, so we're going to move it. So I guess we might as well take this pawn and open up the line of sight to the rook. It also comes with a tempo on the queen. Luckily, our queen is... Not luckily, we had to have seen our queen was defended first. Otherwise, we'd lose the queen. But since our queen is defended, again, if he okay, so he takes our queen, we take, and now this is still pretty deadly. We're up 2 pawns. Is this isolated pawn structure worth being up 2 pawns? I would say absolutely. And he resigns because the pressure is just too great on the light squares. You see, the pawn structure had no bearing on that game. Only if you got to the later stages of the endgame would that matter. So now we're up against Dev Morpheus. For some reason, we dropped all the way back down. We're 943, but we're playing a 777. I should play the lottery. That's good luck, right? But it's not good luck for him because he moved his queen on move 2. At least it's a new square, right? We're used to seeing it on e2. This is a new square that doesn't run into... Well, it still does, kinda, so... Anyway, he moves his queen out. I'm going to strike the center on move 2 with my pawn, as I like to do often. And then I'm going to go e6, developing my dark square bishop and winning my pawn back. He says, I don't think so, buddy. I'm going to move my queen around and defend this. Of course, it's a completely horrible move. He should be developing his pieces. He shouldn't be trying to hang on to his pawn because he needs to give it back and start developing. If he wastes time doing this, I mean, then I'll just develop and he's going to have such a... I'm going to have such a lead in development that I'm going to win, basically. So I'm just going to develop the knight. You could try to go for this pawn immediately, try to win it back, maybe with, I don't know, queen c7 or knight a6, but I just want to develop. I don't really care about the pawn. I don't mind being down a pawn if I have much better development than my opponent. Okay, he finally puts a pawn in the center, opens up the scope for his bishop, but he's not threatening e5 because we can take it, so that's fine. The downside of this move is this pawn is undefended because our knight controls the square. If our knight takes it, does he have any resources? Can he swing his queen somewhere and do anything? No, there's no checks. We don't have any loose pieces, so I'm just going to take the free pawn. Now our material's even. Our position's better because we have 2 pieces. He has none. And this pawn was hit twice, so we were threatening to win it as well. White wastes time moving his queen, the only piece he's moving, hitting a knight. We're just going to capture his pawn with tempo because it hits the queen, and the game is over. We are up 1 pawn, but the position's got to be like -4. We're just completely winning. Alright, maybe exaggeration, but we're completely winning. I mean, white can't recover from this. Because he moves his queen, we throw a pawn in the center, and we have beautiful knights, beautiful center, bishop and castle incoming. At any moment, we could have offered that queen trade because it was supported. So now he moves his bishop again, but now it eyes this. So I'm thinking to myself, do I have any cool discoveries on the queen? This would be a beautiful check if the square was defended. Like if there was a pawn here, that would be amazing. But there's no pawn there, and there's no need to do anything. I'm just going to play d5, put it in the center. He's not developing. He's messing around. He's playing pawn moves. Threatening my knight. Threatening. Who cares? I mean, I almost want to give it to him, but I'm not going to. You can move it. If you move it back, it threatens the pawn. He can't move the pawn because the queen's behind it. But I feel like this is more aggressive. It may provoke something dumb like f3. So I'm just going to go here. It also comes with the threat of bishop or knight takes b4 check, winning the queen. And so now white is just hopeless, totally lost in so many different ways. There's no way to defend all the threats. For example, queen f6 hits the rook and threatens to come in with check. White develops a bishop, eyeing the pinning the knight, but if I take this now, check, he can actually take with the queen because my knight's pinned. So that's very clever trick from him. Kudos to my opponent. However, he does nothing to stop this threat. Queen f6, which was a drawback of the b4 move, is that, and you see he only pays attention to this diagonal. This is the reason I didn't do this move before, because I saw bishop can come in and attack because it was defended. But I did it because I saw I had this in response, which of course is terrible for him. This would be checkmate if not for this knight. But I'm sure we can come up with something. Alright. So let's see. I don't want to take his rook or anything like that. I don't really have any checks with my queen though, which is annoying. So I guess I'll just do something more normal and bring in this last piece. Why is this important? Because it breaks the pin, which means this is the thing again. Or I could jump my knight in for different checkmates. He moves his knight, which opens up the rook's control of the back rank and hits my queen. So it's kind of a nice move for him. Let's see. If I go here, oh no, his queen covers that. Sneak attack. I could just take the pawn and threaten everything. We'll keep it simple. He has no real way to defend anything, so I was trying to set up a checkmate though. So he goes back, but I'm not gonna, I mean I could take his rook and then the knight, but I really wanted to checkmate him. Okay, so let's take this pawn and hit the queen and control this square, so maybe I can try to checkmate him on this way, on the dark squares. And you can see everything's on the back rank. He moved his queen a ton of times. This was easily one of the worst games because we were starting to get some good games at like 980, 985. But this isn't even... Okay, now I'm just going to go check because maybe he'll resign. Usually they get discouraged by seeing something like this and they resign. I'm hoping. I can hope, right? Usually lower rated players, when they see this, they get extremely... They fall into despair. But this guy doesn't, so I'm going to take his queen. And I'm going to check... Oh! I gave it back. I'm a nice guy. And I want a better game. And now I'm only up 1 point of material. You see that? I don't know. I instant moved. I thought it was checkmate, but his bishop covered it. Okay. Then I'll have to win the game all over again. I'm up a pawn. My position's obviously a lot better. He still has everything on the back rank. He's threatening this. This is actually instructive, so it's a good thing I blundered. I'm just going to castle, which protects the pawn, connects the rook, so I can throw one on the c-file. He wastes time, threatens the bishop, but it's a big waste of time. He needs to be getting his pieces out. Now that I literally just gave him a full queen, he needs to start developing, but he doesn't really see it. I have to move my bishop. I'm going to move it to this square, so I have this diagonal to play on, these two squares basically. I'll decide which one I want later. Now he develops his knight. Fine. Towards the center. Fine. I can improve my rooks. I can improve my bishop. I can improve my center. Giving this check only makes him hide further. I'm going to put a rook on the c-file, and then I can coordinate with a knight here. But he doesn't develop his pieces. He moves the same piece again. What does this threaten? Nothing, because all of these are covered. What's the drawback? Well, I'm just going to kick it since it threatens nothing. Oh, maybe it was a reroute for some reason. So now he goes here. I threaten a trade. I'm fine with the trade. Because his king is weak, this pawn is weak. You don't need to take it though, if you don't want to. But I'm just going to take it. I don't see a reason not to. Now he has two bishops which are annoying, so I think I'm going to go here and pin the bishop. Now that he doesn't have two bishops, it should be easier to convert with less tactics. I damaged my pawn structure a little bit, but I'm up a pawn, and we can try to convert this endgame. Oh no, I'm not up a pawn. I am... He has a knight, and I have 4 pawns, so he is up... He has a piece. He has a knight, and I don't. I just have 4 pawns for that knight. Oh, that's a crazy imbalance that I didn't even pay attention to. So he moves his rook and attacks a pawn. I am going to... I want to go here, but I want my rooks out. Although there's also no reason to give him this pawn. So like here, he takes, I go here, he moves his rook. I sneak attack with D. There's no way to save the rooks. Okay, so he'll fall for that probably. I'm going to go here and attack this, tempting him to take this. And I'll pre-move this, and I'll pre-move this, and maybe he'll fall into it. Okay, this defends this way, and it attacks this, which cannot be defended because all of his pieces are stuck at home. He takes a pawn with the bishop, but now I get to win a rook. So now I'm back up a good amount of material, which is helpful. And he develops his knight with a tempo on the rook. I'm going to move my rook and take a pawn. He now takes a pawn, but it doesn't create threats, so I have a little bit of time. So now I have one rook that needs to come into the game. I should probably do something about that. I can move it to one of these squares. I'm going to throw in... No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, no. I'm going to go here and just put pressure on the knight and controlling the D1, the D file for the escape. There is a checkmate I'm trying to create, like rook A2, bishop F3, rook D1. But that's a little hopeful, a little optimistic. But this does hit the knight. He does move the knight in. Not only can I trade, but I can pin it, but then I lose because of, well, I lose the rook because of this check. So we don't want to give him anything like that. The rook is hit though. Trading, we could. It is a strong bishop, but it would simplify things. Would it though? Yeah, I guess it would. And now I just kind of want to trade stuff, if I'm being honest. I'm just going to go for this because he's not going to let me take his bishop. In the right situation, I'll sack my rook for his bishop and just win with the pawns. So I have a rook, he has a bishop, but I also have 2 extra pawns, so that's the important part. Any trades of the pieces are good for me, so that's important to know. You're looking for trades. You just have to watch the C pawn. Okay, he's trying to coordinate on light square. I'm just going to grab the pawn, and I can always go here and block him off and run one of my pawns up the board. The only problem is I have 55 seconds, and we know how that goes. Okay, so I'm just going to go here. It's on a defended square. I can check from behind. And because he moved his pawn forward, his king no longer has pawn protection, which means I can give these ladder checks. If he moves over, that's ladder checkmate. So he has to block with a piece. So like, let's say his king was here and he goes rook over. That would have been a try. Then I take the rook. Then he takes with either the bishop or pawn. So like, I don't know, here. But then I'm still winning, but that was a try for him. But this, of course, is just ladder mate. And that's why moving your pawn weakens your king. Perfect example. So we got some points. Only 5, but we're getting there. 943. And submit your rapid games. Free review from my point of view in my Discord. Goodbye.